quorum.
What's that, Georgia?
We definitely have a quorum.
Yeah, that's good.
Oh, yeah.
Good morning, everybody. I'd like to call this meeting to order, and please join me for the saying of the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we'll start out with public comment. Do we have any public comment this morning? No? Okay, we'll go to the Executive Director's report. Good morning, Georgiana.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's really good to see everyone's faces this morning. I would like to, since this is the first meeting of 2024, I'd like to acknowledge any new members that we have in the room today. You can just raise your hand if you are a new member. Yes, sir. Yes, would you like to introduce yourself?
Oh, okay. Good morning, everyone. My name is Eric Fielding, and I represent Melville.
All right. Anyone else? All right. Well, we have a full house, so very excited to see everyone. I want to start off by saying that we have some perfect attendance awards for 2023, and we appreciate everyone's leadership. And so for life happens. We understand that not everyone can make every single meeting at times, but for those that have done that, we just want to say thank you very much. And so for the TAC, that is Bob Musser, Jared Francis, Frank Watanabe, Kwabena, KB, Afasu, and then Cliff Graham, of course. And I have your awards here. And we will take a group photo immediately following this meeting outside where the wood background is. And for the CAC members, Rodney Honeycutt, Adam Kohler, Peter Fuskus, Michael Razin, and Arlen DeBlois. So again, thank you so very much. We appreciate your leadership and your ability to attend all of our meetings. That deserves a round of applause. So I do want to update you on a couple items. The director's report is on page 3 of your, page 4 of your agenda, but there's a few other items that I want to bring to your attention. The first one is, as you know, we offered technical assistance to Brevard County to apply for a infrastructure grant for the widening of Ellis Road, the TPO's #1 priority. And unfortunately, Brevard County was notified last week that they did not receive that award. So we're very disappointed about that. We will continue to apply for it again this year. And in fact, we are doing the preliminary work in coordination with Brevard County and our consultant to kind of update the modeling information, which we hope will help the development of that application. So I wanted to let you know that information. Also, wanted to give you an update on the carbon reduction program funding. I'm referencing page 5 and 7 of your correspondence. There are 2 letters from Secretary Perdue. Basically, the state of Florida has told the US DOT that it will not comply with setting performance targets for greenhouse gas emissions and developing a carbon reduction plan. Understanding these issues are national and political in scope and in nature, this still may affect Brevard County because Florida was set to get roughly $320 million from the federal government from the infrastructure bill for the carbon reduction program. And in our budget, in the TPO's budget, we have carbon reduction funds programmed on quite a few projects. We roughly get maybe $1.5 million a year from that infrastructure bill, and we've been very aggressively programming it on various projects. So, I understand the DOT's rationale, as Florida doesn't really have a problem, but as an MPO, we're caught in the middle as a metropolitan or transportation planning organization. So we will continue to work with our DOT partners to kind of understand how this will all play out and seek guidance from our DOT District 5 office. February 1 was the deadline for the department to set those targets, and now that's been extended to March 29th. And we have 100 MPOs, TPOs have 180 days to set targets after the DOT adopts their target. Well, the DOT doesn't plan on adopting a target, which means we're going to have to figure out what to do. And so all of the MPOs within Florida are discussing this and talking about it. And in fact, the Central Florida MPO Alliance, which of course we are members of, have been talking about it, and we will be discussing it in a forum on Friday, among other things. So stay tuned. I just wanted to make you aware of this information. Also on page 9 of your correspondence is a transportation bills summary. There's a lot of transportation bills out there. But I want to just highlight one of the biggest bills of concern, and that is Senate Bill 1032. And it is a very broad transportation bill. This bill has significant impacts to MPOs and other statewide transportation planning. A few points that I want to bring to your attention. This will require the DOT to review each MPO's long-range transportation plan, to ensure that there is connectivity to people and freight, and it's being progressively implemented, that the projects in the long-range plan are being moved forward. If the plan is found to be unsatisfactory or incongruent with the metropolitan area, the DOT will return the plan to the MPO for revision. It will also require DOT to set policy performance metrics and a minimum acceptable score to rate each MPO's service to its communities, taking into consideration traffic congestion, the utilization rate of multimodal transportation facilities, resident satisfaction, and efficiency of the transportation system. Any MPO that does not achieve the minimum acceptable score could potentially be taken over by the DOT secretary, who would appoint a new executive director and appoint a new chair of the TPO governing board, and potentially restructure the governing board and potentially merge MPOs. So if you get the top score, you'll get a $5 million prize to put on any project, which that's the cherry on top. And as you know, $5 million doesn't go very far in our transportation business. And it would also abolish the MPO Advisory Council and abolish the Florida Transportation Commission that recommends the DOT secretary to the governor. So, first of all, we have a great relationship with our DOT District 5 staff, but, we're definitely going to be discussing this in more detail with the governing board. Paul Gugelman, the MPOAC General Counsel, which also happens to be the TPO's General Counsel, has developed a legal opinion on this bill, and that is included in your package as well. The House version of this bill, which is House Bill 1032, is really moving. It's moving. It has passed several committees. And it really puts the department in it puts them in a terrible position because, if you survey any citizen on, the performance of the transportation system, say, let's take I-4, for instance, do you think that they are going to give a favorable rating or any other area within Florida with the way that we're growing? It really zaps local decision-making. And, no one really knows at this point where this is coming from. you know, if they know, they're not talking. And so this was a huge topic of conversation at the statewide meeting 2 weeks ago. So everyone is looking at it very closely. You know, Mark Reichert, the MPOAC director, executive director, met with Representative McFarland, you know, the House Committee chair, to share information and kind of talk about all of the things that the MPO already does. That is really, it seems that there is a misunderstanding about what MPOs do, and that may be where this is coming from. But unfortunately, you know, she was very receptive, and we have talking points to kind of share this information, but the bill continues to move. So this is very important. This is a bill that you need to know about, and we will be discussing it with the governing board on Thursday. And in your package, there are quite a few other transportation bills, and in the interest of time, I'm not going to go through those. But as all of these bills continue to move through the legislature, we're going to send that out to you. Zoe will be giving you updates and sharing this information with you. And also in your package, you have the attendance reports for 2023, as well as the governing board meeting minutes in attachment F. And I do want to mention that in the meeting minutes for the governing board, if you remember in December, we received a big presentation from the DOT on transportation, the DOT's work program. And we had a conversation about how we were concerned about the lack of new projects and new funding, you know, due to cost increases, revenue estimates, and what have you. And so in your agenda package, Commissioner Allender with the port prepared some formal comments, and those are in the minutes. They were given to DOT, and we have requested that DOT will be coming to give a much more detailed presentation on fair share and to really present on funding and the money and how that's going to, so that we can all understand that better as a group. And so we're anticipating that presentation in April. So we'll be working with them on the development of that. So, Mr. Chair, that is my comments for today.
Okay, thank you, Georgiana. Appreciate the information. Yes, Pete.
Thank you, Cliff. I was talking to Sarah about 1032 because it struck me as being odd. You know, the way the TPOs and the MPOs work, they're from the grassroots, from local municipalities up. This kind of reverses the trend. It's a property like Farmington or the new Duda development. They could shoot down like a South Street widening because it isn't congruent. I smell some big bucks from some big real estate developers somewhere in the background here. And, you know, to where a nice laid-back county like Brevard County would be subservient to a congested Orange County just based on the analysis required. And a county like Orange County would get all of our dollars because they have more of a need with congestion and so forth. And, you know, I was looking at this, and part of my discussion with Sarah is, well, where's this coming from? Where are the big bucks in back of this? And she said, well, we've been looking into that too, but we don't have any answers. And I just want to share that with you.
Thank you, Pete. Any other questions for Georgiana? Yes, Christy.
So is FDOT being held accountable? Or do they have a metrics that you have to follow?
That's a good question.
Well, yeah, that was, again, well, Christy, to your point, this puts DOT in a terrible position, as I said. You know, we as MPOs, TPOs, we control some federal funding, but we certainly don't control all funding. And we have a very long priority list, which was hence the discussion in December, and the fact that many of our projects just aren't moving, the majority of them on state roads. So again, the department is not taking a position on this. They're very quiet.
Yeah.
However, again, I can't imagine that the department would want to take over an MPO. There is a reason why Florida has one of the best transportation systems in the country, and that is because we work so closely together to plan the transportation system. You know, that's partnership, coordination, MPOs, and FDOT. So good point.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Cliff? Yeah, if I may, this is for members of the CAC and the TAC as well. If any of you have any interactions with any of our legislative delegation, please express your total opposition to SB 1032. If you'll read the Paul Gugelman's letter in your file, he brings up a lot of good points why this is a really, really bad bill. So if you have any conversations with any of our legislators, please express your opposition to this bill.
Good point, Phil. Thank you. Yes, Ginger.
Yes, Mark Reichert, there have been, sending letters to the senator as well as folks on the committee. And again, Representative McFarland, Mark Reichert met with her one-on-one. He just wasn't able to get any information. He's just, if someone knows where this is coming from, they're not saying. So I don't know if someone did something really wrong, but regional planning, I mean, if you're not doing regional planning, then, we're not doing our job. None of this really makes any sense. Yeah. So we think that perhaps there's just a lack of understanding. So we will see.
Sounds like more to come.
Yes.
Okay, we'll move on to the consent agenda. We have 4 items today. The first one is the Technical and Citizens Advisory Committee meeting minutes from December 11th, 2023. Next is Resolution 24-14, acceptance and approval to execute Sun Trail Grant Award. Work Order 24-10K as in Kilo, North Merritt Island Pioneer Trail Scope of Services and Fiscal Year 24 Operating Budget Amendment. Third item is Resolution 24-12, Space Coast TPO Performance Measure Targets Safety PM1. Item 4, Work Order 24-11K as in Kilo, Ellis Road, Sub-Area Model Development Scope of Services. I'd look for a motion from the TAC for the consent agenda.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Christie. Do I have a second? Second by Frank. Over to you, Phil.
Okay, and from the CAC, do we have a motion, please?
So moved.
Motion from Arlen, second from Henry. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
From the TAC, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item carries unanimously. All right, next is action items. We have 1 action item today, and that is it is Resolution 13, Space Coast TPO Vision Zero Action Plan Update. Good morning.
Hi. Hi, good morning, everyone. Shelby Villatoro. I'm the Education Outreach Coordinator at the Space Coast TPO, and I also manage our Vision Zero program. So for those of you who were with us back in October, I gave an annual update, and part of that I shared that we spent a large part of the year working on our action plan update. And so we're really excited to come back and share that we have wrapped up that update, and we are sharing that, that draft annual update, or I'm sorry, that draft action plan with you all. For the sake of paper, we did not print that full action plan for you today in draft form. I did share the link in your packet, so you can view it online currently as a draft, but the big piece that we'll talk about today is actually the strategies, and that should be included in your packet. So before we get to the what, I do want to touch on the why. So why did we do an action plan update? So this was originally published in 2020. Obviously, we were working on it before then, so it just needed a little bit of a refresh. The big reason being that we wanted to be able to go after some funding that has recently become available, and that is the Safe Streets for All funding from USDOT. And as part of that funding, you have to have an action plan that checks certain boxes. And so our action plan, because it was so I don't want to say old, but it came out before this funding was available, did not check those boxes. And so we needed to make sure it checked those boxes, and we have done the update so that it does that. It also has been out for a few years, and so we were able to meet some of the goals, many of the goals that we had outlined in our original action plan, and even exceed some of those. One of those being passing resolutions in all of our municipalities and county. So because we were able to check a lot of those boxes, we wanted to be able to expand and lay out our next steps. And then lastly, the Space Coast was one of the first people here in Florida to adopt Vision Zero and start moving forward with that effort. And so since then, a lot of the best practices, a lot of methodologies come out about new things we could be doing. And so we really wanted to bring some of that into the plan as well and change up some of those strategies. And so we really took a holistic approach when we did that update. We didn't just add in those things to check boxes for funding. We really tried to beef it up where we could. So some of those significant updates that I want to call out for you all are setting a target date to achieve zero. Obviously, we updated our high injury network for the latest data that we have available. We included an equity analysis, which we have touched on in previous meetings, as well as identified our targeted safety corridors, which I will touch on. And then again, those new objectives and strategies that will drive our work through our Vision Zero leadership team and the work that we do every day at the TPO. And I love this graphic we included in there. Just putting that number in perspective. So our 2018 to 2022 data, just under 27 or just under 3,000 folks were killed or seriously injured on our roads, and it's about a cruise ship worth of people, right? So it's just to put that number into perspective. It's all about humanizing it. So we did put that in the action plan as one of those graphics. And so, as I said, one of those updates was setting a target date, and that is actually required by USDOT as part of the Safe Streets for All funding requirements, is that your action plan does have a target date. And so to align with our long-range transportation plan and the date of 2050 and those goals, we have included a target date of 2050 for zero fatalities and serious injuries on our roadways. As I mentioned, we did update our high injury network, and so that map is included in there as well as some more in-depth statistics and breakdowns by mode. And all of these are also available on our website as well. We did a in-depth equity analysis and broke down some different transportation disadvantaged communities. And so we're able to use that not only for the grant funding for SS4A, but also for any other projects you all might be working on. And then we used all of that to identify targeted safety corridors, which will again assist us in going after those assist us in helping you all go after the grant funding. And these are corridors that have been previously studied that still have not had improvements, that fall on our high injury network, and that also fall into those disadvantaged community areas. And then what I think is the most important part, which is why it's included in your packet, is those action plan strategies. And so these are the kind of guiding principles of how we're going to get to zero. And so we really took it more from a safe system approach. Before we were focused on 3Es, 4Es, but now it's safe system, and we've outlined 7 objectives of how to get there, which are really focused on identifying that as a non-implementing agency, what can we at the TPO do? And so we really want to maximize the efforts that we do have control over. Obviously, I do our education and outreach. I can go out and tackle a lot of those things. We have control over a lot of our planning, things like that. But then also providing resources to our partners and our local agencies and helping them achieve zero. And so our strategies are really focused on owning in on those 2 elements. And so today, I asked to adopt our action plan with resolution number 24-13. And I hope you guys all had a chance to look at it online, and hopefully we'll get everything passed, and I'll print hard copies for you next meeting. Any questions?
Thank you, Shelby.
Chris.
My question is, thank you. My question is, from what I've seen recently, there's a lot of non-expensive things that can be done at intersections with paint. And is the county here? I know the county's not typically in favor of that, but I mean, either FDOT roads or county roads? Is there something that, instead of waiting until we get closer to 2050, that we could start talking to the county and FDOT about painting intersections?
So that's part of, I mean, what we do. We push for that. We encourage that. At our June workshop last year, we actually hosted Laura Hardwick with City of Orlando. They're doing a ton of that stuff, those quick build projects. But again, we can't go out and build those as the TPO. We have to kind of lean on our agencies to implement that. So I encourage it. I think it would be wonderful. But I even, I go out into our communities and I tell them, tell your leaders this is what you want, if this is what you want. But, unfortunately, to your point, they've got to want to do it as well. So, but our goal is to get those resources out to share, that this is what other areas are doing. These are the guides that are available. And so the hope is that we can kind of slowly shift that culture there. So
Maybe think about doing like a specific resolution if you guys do come up with less expensive things that can be done in the next 5 years.
thank you, Christy.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Shelby. With the recent turn of events in regards to the Brightline tragedies, I assume the statistics are being gathered on that as well. One of the things that I would like to see is, I know that the group does many safety pop-ups. I would certainly like to see a safety pop-up in relation to rail crossing safety. I did, and our group did participate in the safety pop-up that was held by both FECI and the FEC Railway and Brightline at Melbourne. And also, I don't know, Georgiana, if you would want to speak to any potential grants on additional safety measures that would be possible to be implementing at our crossings that meet the FRA specifications, but that we might want to enhance.
Yes, thank you, Greg. Yes, we have been in contact with Brightline, and we have an add-on item actually for the TPO Governing Board. And we, with their approval, we are going to potentially take the lead on applying for a grant for safety improvements, whether they be exit gates, quad gates, on those 10 locations that do not have that type of safety improvements. One of which where the tragedy took place, where the two vehicles, went around the gate and got hit by the Brightline train. So we're in coordination with Brevard County as well as the City of Melbourne and Cocoa, because those are the three municipalities, to see how that would look. But we do need to wait for the grant opportunity to come out, whether it be a CRISI grant or a railroad elimination grant, something along those lines. So we're more than willing to, take the lead on that. We've also reached out to DOT to kind of let them know that we're looking at doing this. So of course, I think any sort of safety pop-up event, would be very helpful. And then, of course, the RAISE grant, where DOT and Brightline partnered together, those improvements will be taking place with delineators and more low-cost signage improvements. So there are things coming, but we need to do everything that we can to educate folks on, Yes, all right.
Thank you, Greg.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Greg.
Pete?
Yeah, I'd like to get back to pavement markings. A while back, I bitched a little bit that you only have crosswalks at red lights, and sometimes the distance between the red lights could be a half a mile to a mile. But you have a lot of intersections where people tend to cross. And I was told in a roundabout way that in the state of Florida, every intersection is considered a crosswalk, but we're not going to paint. So that being the case, I wasn't too happy about that decision. But, I know how to jaywalk. I stop and look both ways, wait for traffic to clear, then haul butt. So I don't feel too much at risk, but I brought that up, that we don't have enough pedestrian crossings, at least pavement markings. And then Sarah, she mentioned that there's one close to my house that nobody obeys. It's a trail crossing, and there's a crosswalk and the stop bars, and people haul butt. You're standing right there hoping that they'll obey the state law and stop for you. But over there on Barna, they've got something in their head, where they're not going to stop. And time after time after time. So I'm kind of convinced that pavement markings don't work unless you have strict enforcement that writes tickets. And in the climate where it's so much danger to enforce the law as it is, I really don't see a uniformed officer wanting to take a risk to write a ticket for somebody that doesn't stop at a crosswalk. And, so we're just in bad times as far as the pavement marking goes, and I just wanted to throw my 2 cents in.
Well, Mr. Chair, if I may just add
Yes,
on
Georgiana.
to that, you bring up a very good point, because enforcement is a big part of it. Whether we're talking about a railroad or a roadway, engineering and education is huge, but folks have been potentially doing this trespassing for years, through these rail crossings. The problem is now that train is moving entirely too fast for you to get away with doing that. And it's a serious problem, and enforcement is going to be very important. I was talking to Roy Newton from the Federal Railroad Administration, which he has come here and presented to us before, and the cameras that the trains have, they record hundreds of trespassing concerns where no one, fortunately, was hurt. And so enforcement is going to have to be key. And so, the red light camera that is installed at WH Jackson, I think, is very important. And we need to do everything that we can, hit every angle.
Yeah, Mr. Fielding.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Hi, good morning. Do I need the mic or?
Here. Have at it.
Yeah, just a quick two-part question on the plan. Is the action plan published annually?
No. So what we do is we will use the action plan, and then annually we will do an annual report to provide updates on on that tracked progress. And we will update kind of as needed.
So, but it's updated annually, or is it, how often is it published as a plan?
As a new plan, just as needed. We don't have a set target on when it's actually updated.
Well, you kind of are helping to answer the second question, which was on the timeline for implementation. I see 6 months, 1 year, but then there's a range of 2 to 5 years on some of the milestones. So I'm wondering whether it would be advantageous to have like a more targeted milestone, like 3 or 4 years from now, and then when we do an update, then if we need to adjust the target based on circumstances. It just seems like it's kind of a range that isn't something that we're striving for when you have a wide range like that for a milestone.
Yeah, so we'll go in next year when I do that annual update that I come in every October and do, and use that plan to update those items. And we can update the strategies in there as it goes. But we're kind of in new territory here, because our previous plan, we kind of checked all the boxes and then needed to go. So it may be that we update that next year or 2 years from now. We're kind of, like I said, in a new territory. So it's a good point. And I did want to say, Cliff, if you don't mind, to Pete's comment, it's a great comment on the enforcement. The county did just partner with Best Foot Forward. I don't know if you've heard of that program yet. They will be it's a pedestrian safety program. They will actually be doing crosswalk enforcement in the next couple of weeks. So they will deliberately be going out and writing tickets for people who don't stop for people in crosswalks. So that's happening at several crosswalks in the county in the next couple of weeks. And I actually believe they're going to be speaking at this meeting next month. So you'll hear more about the program.
Thank you, Shelby. Any other discussion or questions on this item? If not, I would look for a motion for approval of the Vision Zero Action Plan from the TAC.
So moved.
That's a motion by Devin. I have a second by Christie. I will move it over to you, Phil.
And from the CAC, do we have a motion, please? Motion from Greg and second from Arlen. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed?
And from the TAC, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Okay, next is presentations. We do have one presentation today, and this is going to be the member orientation, Transportation Planning 101 by Georgiana.
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. So this will be a refresher for many of our veterans here, but new information for some, and our goal is just to help you better understand and execute your role as a Technical and Citizen Advisory Committee member. So we will get into it. This is the agenda. We're going to talk about what is an MPO or TPO, who is the Space Coast TPO, the governing board and advisory committee structure and function, what are the core work products that we deliver every year or every several years, to include public participation, what is the regional coordination that we undertake, and we'll end with just some general member information. So, you know, we're a transportation planning organization. However, you will hear me say MPO or Metropolitan Planning Organization. They have the same meaning. They are interchangeable. We use Space Coast TPO because we're on the Space Coast and we do something related to transportation. So every MPO or TPO has their own name that they use. So what is a Metropolitan Planning Organization? How did we get here? So understanding the origin of MPOs is really crucial to comprehend your role in the system. And it really started in the early 20th century. You know, the goals were to connect farms to markets and create better country roads for the cars. And, you know, by 1944, Congress and the administration agreed upon a general outline of a national highway program that would connect major cities in the country. The most critical change in federal policy that launched a lot of spending and led to a lot of other changes was the emergence of the Interstate Highways Program. By the 1950s, conversations were to provide for national defense, promote commerce and trade, and job creation. In 1956, a 41,000-mile system was approved, and Uncle Sam said, we need to dedicate revenue. And so they collected federal fuel taxes and established what is known as the Highway Trust Fund, which exists today. And coordination began to become a very important issue. The federal government had absolutely no desire to construct it. They generated the revenue and they passed it to the states. And they said to the state highway department, you know, you figure out where the interstate's gonna go and make it work. And the states got busy doing that. And immediately the communities and the cities started complaining as the interstate really passes through them, over them, or in some cases completely bypassed some of the cities, which was also not a good thing. The state road departments, by and large, did not invite the cities to the planning table. And everyone was trying to figure out how to get a voice in the process. And the cities and the county were, you know, they began collaborating, trying to figure out, you know, use any local board or regional advisory committee they had to be able to be part of the conversation. So one of Miami's oldest and historic communities, the Overtown, experienced neighborhood bulldozing during the construction of I-95 in the 1960s. This is just one example, but forcibly displaced more than 12,000 residents, almost all of whom were Black. And this was originally a community settled by Black American railroad workers for Flagler's Florida East Coast Rail Line. Transit services back then were predominantly privately owned and operated, and by the mid-century, however, transit was in serious financial trouble due to heavy marketing of the automobile. Vast sums of public money were being spent to provide road networks that would connect the suburbs and their cars to cities. And when private providers sold out or went bankrupt, the cities were faced with this unexpected responsibility by providing public transit service. So the cities had to step in to fill that transit gap, but they were financially unprepared. The first federal support for transit came from the Housing Act of 1961. And this was, a modest amount of money from the federal government for urban public transit, with most of the money going for capital acquisitions, but not operating expenses. And in the 1962 Highways Act, Congress came up with a concept that there should be a better process for planning activities. And we're sharing this piece of legislation with you because it continues to drive the transportation planning train today, really in everything that we do. All transportation planning supported by the federal government uses the 3C process. So what does that mean? Continuous, comprehensive, and cooperative. Continuous, what that means is you don't put it on the shelf and forget about it. Let's take our long-range plan, for instance. That plan is updated every 5 years. We can do amendments to that long-range plan. Circumstances change, needs change, but there's got to be an ongoing planning process. Comprehensive. Congress is already beginning to think about more than just roads and cars. They said you should be thinking about transportation as a comprehensive system of ways that things and people move around, and then cooperative. Congress said, we're still hearing from the mayors and the city council members and the county commissioners, and they're not happy with what you're doing. Would you just sit down and make nice? It was a request, but unfortunately, it still didn't have any teeth. And so the 3C process is embedded in our planning process today. And of course, there was a lot going on in the 60s, as you know. Every time the federal government engages in a major policy concern, it really has a ripple effect on everything the federal government does. The Civil Rights Act of 1962, of course, it has a lot to do with voting rights and non-discrimination in housing and other things, but it also affects transportation planning. And this is to ensure fair contracting and to ensure minority neighborhoods are not abused. And so we're required to consider the impacts of our transportation efforts on all of our communities, but especially those that may be disadvantaged. Another policy that developed in the 1960s was environmental concerns. The acronym for the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA. You've probably heard about having to go through the NEPA process on, many of our transportation projects, and this will continue to be an essential part of transportation planning. So the interstate program has been running for a dozen years or so, and Congress is still receiving an increasing volume of complaints and different priorities. And Congress had enough. The reauthorization resulted in the creation of MPOs by Congress. They mandated them. In other words, this wasn't an option anymore. Under the federal law, urbanized areas over 50,000 people must have an MPO to oversee transportation planning. They also funded the planning activities of MPOs. They took a percentage of the budget and allocated it to MPOs for planning the transportation system. And by the way, that is how we're funded today. So on October 19th, 1977, the Brevard MPO was established. We were called the Brevard MPO back then. The creation of MPOs in 1973 was very important, but Ice-T changed the game. 18 years later, they are still hearing complaints. So in 1991, Congress passed the Intermodal Surface Transportation Efficiency Act. We called it Ice-T, and they wrote into law the authority and the responsibility to craft long-range transportation plans. MPOs had to make decisions, and they had the authority to allocate federal funding. And it was really a watershed event in transportation policy. There's been multiple reauthorizations since. So the FAST Act of 2015 really put an emphasis on performance measures and prioritized freight. It was the first time that funds were transferred from general fund to the Highway Trust Fund, which really, the trust fund was starting to no longer be able to meet our needs due to our reliance on the fuel tax. And so that brings us to our most recent authorization, passed November 2021, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. We call it IIJA or bill, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Bill. And there is a policy priority on EV charging networks, sustainability and resilience to changing climates, and more equitable transportation and safety, among other things. So how are we established in federal law? You know, most of the language concerning MPO structure, authority, and responsibility is contained in 23 United States Code 134. If you ever want some reading material. Once an urbanized area reaches a population of 200,000, then it becomes a transportation management area. We are categorized as a TMA. The TPO serves two urbanized area boundaries. That's Palm Bay, Melbourne, and Titusville, urbanized area. And we also have a small area within the boundary of Brevard County. It's the Sebastian Vero Beach urbanized area boundary. And so because of this, we receive additional federal funding that you all help us program each year, roughly around $7.5 million a year. And we have additional responsibilities, and federal certification is a requirement for us. Every 4 years, the feds, come into our office, and they have an extensive all-day certification where we have to present to them how we are planning the transportation system and abiding by all of these rules. And we also are required to consider all modes of transportation, not just surface transportation. Our governing board has direct authority for the TPO plans and programs required to keep transportation funds moving. And and Florida is among those states that have most aggressively sought to incorporate MPOs into state law, which is very interesting, with this new legislation that's out there. And in Florida, MPOs operate in an environment established by a combination of federal and state legislation. So Chapter 339175, we know that kind of like the back of our hand. That clearly describes our responsibilities. The governor approves the membership plan based on the most recent census. The allocation of our members is stipulated in Florida law, and it's determined on an equitable geographic population ratio basis. So let's talk about who is the Space Coast TPO. And as you know, we are unique, and the transportation system is not just highways. It is an array of modes that are used to provide mobility and serve the economic and the social needs of the region. A mode simply refers to a type or a means of transportation, such as an airplane, ship, automobile, train, rocket, bus, bicycle, or walking. I mean, we have a lot of them. And the transportation system, by definition, is just made up of several modes, or we are called multimodal. And the purpose of a multimodal system is not to get everyone out of their cars, but to provide transportation choices. That's what we're after. We have no decision-making power over our modal agencies, clearly, but we are responsible for ensuring safe and efficient access to those other systems. And they are extremely important for us here in Brevard County and for our state as a whole. So things to consider in your role. The influence of each mode really goes beyond jurisdictional boundaries. And it's critical that we view transportation holistically and that we discuss how to improve it together. So we are organized by an interlocal agreement between Brevard County's local governments, Port Canaveral, and the Florida Department of Transportation. We are an independent organization. We are not county employees. We contract with the Board of County Commissioners for administrative support, benefits, and office space. We actually rent office space out of the county building. So one county, 16 cities and towns, 2 airports, a seaport, and a spaceport. Our TPO approves over $1 billion in federal and state transportation dollars to implement projects, and those projects are laid out in our Transportation Improvement Program. Our governing board is supported by staff and our advisory committees, and our TPO board has 19 members, including all 5 of the county commissioners, 13 city council members, and 1 port commissioner. And our governing board's responsibility is to determine transportation policy. You know, they approve transportation plans and mutually agree on state and federally funded projects to improve regional mobility for the entire county. Their job is to manage the 3C process. And I know the governing board strategic plan has been presented in the past to you, but it's really a 3-year guiding document, and the plan has 5 emphasis areas to focus our efforts: safety, linking transportation with land use, sustainability and resiliency, innovation and technology, and they're all tied to our long-range transportation plan goals. And this really helps focus our efforts and narrow in on where investments should be made. Each area has a goal, a strategy, a tactic, and a performance measure. So moving into member roles, you know, the TPO governing board, you know, has 5 advisory committees as part of our organizational structure. Sunshine Law is applicable to all of our committees and board members. Members, you know, cannot go and sit in private to discuss an issue, especially if that issue is expected to come up on the agenda for a vote as an action item in the foreseeable future, I will say. That is prohibited, so just be careful about that. Committee members are not under sunshine and talking with their board members, city managers. Board members can certainly have conversations at their council meetings about things that happen at the TPO governing board. In fact, we hope that that happens. We have a set of operating policies and procedures that outlines, you know, everything from emergency powers to, you know, the role and function of the governing board and its committees. So the technical advisory committee responsibilities, you know, Florida law mandates that the TAC be comprised of planners, engineers, representatives from local aviation authorities, local ports, local transit, and the school district. And so you were selected to provide technical input from your professional perspective. And the primary role of any committee member is to provide input to the governing board, to use when they're making those transportation decisions, and they do listen to the recommendations from our committees. And then the Citizens Advisory Committee is exactly the opposite. This is where you come to express your opinion. The state mandates that we have representation from the entire geographic area. Consideration should be given to, you know, minority, elderly, and other groups that may not be adequately represented, because we want to get different points of view. And our Citizens Advisory Committee is an extremely important part of our public involvement process. And then we have our Bicycle, Pedestrian, and Trails Advisory Committee that makes recommendations to the CAC, TAC, and the governing board. And membership is open to all interested citizens and representatives of specialized interest groups. And then finally, our Transportation Disadvantaged Local Coordinating Board is an independent board supported by the TPO. The purpose of the TDLCB, which is what we call it, is to evaluate the service levels, safety, and other issues of transit operations provided by Space Coast Area Transit, serving the elderly, people with disabilities, or otherwise disadvantaged citizens, such as those with low income in Brevard County. The chair is appointed by our TPO governing board, but the administration and support are provided by Space Coast Area Transit. So we work very closely with Terry and his team on all transit planning. So moving into our core work products, because these will be coming before you throughout this year. This is a relationship between our core work products. And, you know, transportation planning involves several, programs. All of these products will basically guide our investments, all of our projects. And let me just say, public involvement is embedded very deeply in every one of these work products. So the Unified Planning Work Program is the mechanism that we use to guide and fund the work of the TPO staff. And it defines how much money is being budgeted for TPO activities. So each planning activity is identified individually by the TPO, and funding is allocated appropriately. The UPWP discusses, where the TPO is trying to go as an organization, and it outlines the activities that it will undertake within a single fiscal year to achieve its goals. It's our business plan. The long-range transportation plan is really the foundation of all transportation decisions in the region. It provides a vision for our future. I like to say, what do we want to be when we grow up? It should be laid out within that plan. It identifies future transportation demand in the metropolitan area and provides a framework for choosing transportation projects, at least to the extent that we can afford it, because the project must be cost feasible. If a project does not appear in the cost feasible section of the long-range plan, it cannot receive federal funds. It's as simple as that. Now, the state requirements of the long-range plan are slightly different. The state requires us to give emphasis to the strategic intermodal system. Those are our high priority projects, I-95, State Road 528, Ellis Road, et cetera. And it also must reflect the goals of the Florida Transportation Plan, be consistent with local government comprehensive plans, and reflect the coordination among MPOs on facilities crossing MPO boundaries. Again, regional planning. This is something that we have done for many, many, many years, and will continue to do that. And each year, the TPO solicits new projects to be added to our list of priority projects. This is probably one of the most significant tasks we carry out. New projects must be approved by councils and their commissions. We hope they are before they come to the TPO. And again, this is another opportunity for that public involvement. Projects are vetted through the individual councils and commissions, and then they come to the TPO for our board, for this committee, for us to talk about it, for our board to adopt it before it gets vetted through the DOT, before we put any state and federal money on it. And that's so important. But, as my predecessor would always say, this is where the planning meets the money. It's about bringing in the state and federal dollars into Brevard County to put on actual projects. And once it receives funding, it shows up in our transportation improvement program that we adopt every year and have multiple amendments on. And this really just discusses projects that are going to be implemented within the 5 years. You know, every project has a performance goal. Whether it's a safety project, you can go into the TIP and you see how that project is going to deliver a performance goal for Brevard County. Federal and state laws requires that the TIP be consistent with a long-range plan, and the TIP should be consistent with the DOT work program, comp plans, and plans of our local modal agencies, such as our Seaport, Airport, and Spaceport and Transit Agency. The point is that this document keeps the money flowing, and it's real money for real projects. And, you know, public participation engagement. Our public participation plan really tells how we're going to interact with the public to gain input on various decisions. Our citizens have a stake in it. They don't always understand or agree with some of our decisions, but they have a stake in it. And so it's our job to educate and hear their points of view. And so we manage, you know, our public involvement outreach is, you know, I put it up against any MPO within the state of Florida with such a small team that we have. You know, we manage Facebook, Twitter, YouTube accounts. All of the tools and strategies are outlined in this document. You know, we want to engage the public on, you know, discussing needs and solutions. And we gather that input and we communicate those decisions, you know, from elected officials, citizens, media, and agency staff. These are some of our resources and plans that have been created to assist in making those transportation decisions and investments. Most recently, you know, Shelby just presented on our Vision Zero action plan. But projects, new projects can be pulled from these plans to be added to our list of priority projects. So these are tools. And then, you know, data is critical. Monitoring conditions is necessary to identify problems. These are some of the tools that will help develop project priorities and planning decisions. Traffic counts really are one of the primary data sources utilized for monitoring. Each year, the TPO collects traffic counts at approximately 500 locations. We have quite a history. You can go back for quite a few years to many years to see how traffic is increasing on our roadways. And these are stored and uploaded on our online interactive traffic count database. And looking forward, these are some of the work products that you will be hearing a lot about over the next year, you know, from the Cocoa Intermodal Station feasibility study, Southern Brevard Trails Master Plan, which is now underway, the 2050 Long Range Transportation Plan and the Transit Development Plan. This is the first year that we're working with Space Coast Area Transit to develop, to coordinate the LRTP and the TDP, because the two documents really should be talking and feeding in with each other. It's also a federal highway best practice. Mobility on Demand study, Dixon Boulevard Complete Street in the city of Cocoa, which is an area with very high crash bike ped, and so that's a project that we're looking forward to moving forward. North Merritt Island Pioneer Trail, working with Brevard County, and then grant development, the new Ellis Road Infra Grant and the Brevard Rail safety improvements that we will most likely be pursuing. These are just a few, and you know, our staff here works so hard. You know, they make us all look good. They do all the hard work, and so we, for such a small staff, we are very busy. And so as we come to an end here, I do want to touch on regional coordination. You know, the Central Florida MPO Alliance. Regional thinking is crucial. We're a member of the Alliance, which has 6 MPOs, well over 4.6 million people. I think that number is much higher than that now. Our issues are similar. We need that regional connectivity for tourism, goods movement. We need access to and from the Orlando facilities. We have 3 of our board members that serve on the Alliance, and we meet quarterly, and we will be meeting in Orlando on Friday, as a matter of fact, for our next Alliance meeting. And then the Metropolitan Planning Organization Advisory Committee that I mentioned, that is wanting to be abolished, or someone's looking to abolish it. You know, it's where the 27 MPOs in Florida get together. And, you know, it was established by the legislature to enhance the role of the individual MPOs in the transportation planning process. It's the primary forum for discussing policies collectively, and we don't do it in a vacuum. Federal Highway Administration is at the table. Florida DOT Central Office is at the table. And so we can sit around and talk about the problems or the issues and how we can all be better and do better as a state. So if that's not regional planning, I don't know what is. We do have 1 board member that serves on the MPOAC. 1 board member from each MPO serves on that governing board, and we all meet together. So I will end very quickly on just some general member information. I think you all know Zoe is our board services administrator, and she does a fantastic job for us. And so of course you can call me or anyone else here at the TPO, but she is your main point of contact if you need anything. And she will be sending out emails, and you'll see lots of emails from her as we share information to you. But please review agenda packages before the meeting if you can. Attend every meeting, sign in. Please sign in because you want to get an award for perfect attendance. If you cannot attend, you know, it's your responsibility to contact your alternate. Some of you may not know who your alternate is. But the member roster and email addresses can be found under boards and committees on our website. That's either spacecoasttpo.com or sctpo.com. Either way, it'll get you there. If you change your contact information, please contact Zoe. TAC, CAC, TPO meetings are recorded and streamed live on YouTube. And Ant Farm Media, they do a fantastic job, so professional. When I go back and listen to these meetings, when I'm trying to remember things and follow up on things, I'm just so impressed. And we're also experimenting, I think, with streaming live on Facebook. We're going to try that on Thursday, which I think will be really good for the TPO board. The agenda format. So in your package, you'll see the agenda is broken up into various categories, such as reports, consent agenda, and presentations. And we throw as much administrative items under consent as possible. And we were asked to do that by our governing board. And so if you have any inquiries, you can always pull something or ask a question, but you can also contact us as well. The responsibility for each item is listed on the item sheet. So it also will list on the item sheet the strategic plan emphasis area for that particular item, because we don't want to bring something before you that is not getting us to where we want to go, and that is something in the strategic plan. We got to keep our eye on the ball and on our goal. So the requested action also tells you what you're being asked to do. So that's on the item sheet. And then also any attachments for supporting materials. And the website, we just love our website. We get, I think it actually won an award. Abby was responsible for working with our consultant to develop that website, but it's a very good tool. You can find a lot of things on that website. But the website and email are both used to distribute the agendas, and you can find them in the Agenda Center. Minutes and meeting videos can also be found at that same location. And I will end by just saying, you know, be an advocate and help educate our citizens if you can. You know, as things come before you, you know, your neighbor, just discussing things with, a neighbor will really kind of help us promote the TPO using social media. We're very active on social media, so if you share that information, it gets the word out there. If we have any special events in your area, there's DOT project meetings that we hear about, and it happens to be within your area, please show up and go up to the project manager and say, hey, I'm a TAC-CAC member and I'm here to support the project, or you're not supporting the project because of certain reasons. So be sure and share that information, because the transportation planning process is very complex and it can be very confusing to our citizens. And so you can help us educate them. So we're your staff here, and we know the rules and the process, but you are really the stars here, and so we are very happy to have you on our team. You are the TPO, really. And so I will leave it at that. And Mr. Chair, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, Georgiana, that was great. Really good job on that. And I know that it is aimed at the new members, but for some of us that have been doing this a while, it's really a good refresher for us, and
Well, thank you.
reminds us of why we're all here. So thank you so much.
Yeah, Pete, you had a question?
Yeah, and I apologize, Georgiana, for jumping on you like this, but this is part of the looking forward,
Okay.
and it involves Brevard Rail safety improvements. See, and this isn't about people getting creamed for running red lights. Before that happened, there was already a problem along the rail system where homeless people, a lot of them vets, losing their lives along the tracks. And the fact that there's a grant development, I would hate to see that go through the weeds because some red light runners are getting creamed. I mean, this is a bigger problem than that.
Yeah.
And if a grant is being developed, I'd at least like that looked into. So a lot of my brothers and sisters who fought hard for our country don't lose their lives by some train.
Yeah. Well, good point. We are in the process of coordinating with the local governments about that particular grant, because, the county or the cities, they're going to have to provide a 25% match, non-federal, and also when the improvements are put in, if the award is received, they're going to have to maintain those new improvements. So to your point, absolutely. I have no doubt there was a problem long before Brightline, higher speed passenger rails started coming through. And so we need to do everything we can, and perhaps that's an area that we need to do better, grant or no grant, right? And so we have been looking for various information to share on social media, because a lot of folks do have a cell phone, but I think maybe going out to those locations is also going to be very important. Boots on the ground, perhaps. So thank you for that.
Any other questions or comments for Georgiana? Ginger?
I just wanted to ask about remote attendance. I was in Canada for my first meeting, and I sat in Niagara, Canada, listened to you guys, but I had questions at that point in time and wasn't able to ask them at that. Is that going to be some technology will be offered to us in the future?
We, originally, during COVID, clearly, we had the ability to be able to have remote attendance. What we found, it's quite a process to set up that equipment and bring it all here, package it up, and then take it back to the government center. But what we have found was that we did not really have any participation here in Brevard County. Now, I know some other areas within Florida, they still use remote attendance, and they do have citizens, but we never had anyone really participate. Everyone wanted to come here and be in the room and be face to face. And so I apologize for that, but for us to go and try to set up that technology, I would want to see more than just perhaps one person, for the sake of staff time and all the things that we have to do. But I appreciate that comment, Ginger.
Well, I prefer to be here too, but.
Yes, I understand.
And just one more on MPO development. It was the good roads movement before it started the road stuff. It was started by the League of American Women back in the late 1800s.
Okay. Well, you're going way back. Well, thank you. I'll,
Bike rider, every
excellent.
time you ride your car for paved roads.
Well, thank you for that. All right.
Anything else for Georgiana? Okay, thank you, Georgiana.
Thank you so much.
Next up are our reports. Our first report is from the FDOT.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. The report I have for last month is we have some new projects that have just started. I'm pleased to announce that State Road 500 US 192 at Hollywood Boulevard project to widen and accommodate additional turn lanes has started. It began on January 28th and is expected to be completed in spring of 2025. Also, a new project that has started is State Road 520 from Cox Road to Aurora Street, which enhanced safety through access management improvements, has started on February the 1st, as well as project for State Road A1A intersection at State Road 518, which is to remove existing free flow right turn lanes and construct new right turn lanes that will be under signalized control. The NASA Causeway bridge replacement is ahead of schedule now. Instead of the spring 2026 completion date, they have now moved it up to summer of 2025, and they were able to do so because the contractor was able to put an additional crew on the job. And Galaxy Way at Kennedy Parkway is also ahead of schedule to widen the 4 lanes. And that is changed from late summer of 2025 to early summer of 2025. Only delay I have to report today is the safety project that was talked about at our last board for the raised pedestrian crossings along A1A because of a lot of public concern about how they were going to affect traffic because of the incident that happened in India Atlantic. And right now it's back to design. So far, no commitments as to what they are going to do, but they are looking at it based off of public opinion and hope to have a plan here shortly. Other than that, that's all I have to report today.
Okay, great, thank you. Any questions?
Are you going to be putting any LPI signals in those intersections that you're putting right turn lanes in?
I don't know. I will find out.
Thank you.
LPI signals. Okay.
Go ahead, Jared.
Excuse me, just one quick comment on the raised crosswalks in Cocoa Beach. It came up at our last commission meeting, which was this past Thursday night. They did vote to remove them all except the northbound, the northbound at South 21st Street, because people are doing 60, 70, whatever they're doing by Patrick Space Force. And so just one there to kind of slow them down, then the others will be flat, and they removed or requested DOT remove the rest of the raised crosswalks on that. So it is back to design, unfortunately for you guys, but that's where that's at.
Thank you, Mr. Francis. Appreciate that info.
All right, anything else?
Yeah. I'd really like to comment on the raised crosswalks, because where I'm working and driving now, there's hundreds of them and they're not well marked. So I'm cruising at 15 miles an hour so I don't hit them. Because if I hit them, my truck's gonna rattle, the things in the back are jump up and down, and I'm cruising at 15 miles an hour because they work. Now, you politicians in Cocoa, you got something that works. Oh, it's too hard. Well, slow down. And so you're getting rid of them, and you're getting rid of something that works to the deterrent of the pedestrians in that area. And I don't like when politicians think they're so damn smart that they put our lives at risk for political expediency, but that's something that we all have learned to live with, and I'm just making a pissed off comment, that's all.
Anything else? Okay, thank you, sir. Appreciate your report.
Thank you, members.
Okay, next is the BPTAC report. Sarah?
Good morning, Sarah Crom, Senior Transportation Planner. Regretfully, I have nothing to report as due to several staff members being out sick last week, we had to postpone the BPAC meeting to February 26th. So we will still be having our workshop then on strategic visioning with the BPAC, and of course everyone's invited to attend as a in the audience if they aren't a BPAC member. So thank you.
Next up is Space Coast Area Transit. Morning, sir.
Good morning, Ken Harley with Space Coast Area Transit. On our fixed route service, we are seeing a dramatic increase in ridership. We're getting close to pre-pandemic numbers. We're roughly about 15% below what we were pre-pandemic, so we're excited about this year. We're seeing increased riderships month by month, so we're looking forward to exceeding that this year. We just completed the Community Transportation Coordinator's annual evaluation, which was done by Space Coast TPO, and they had a couple of recommendations that came out of that. One was to ensure that all the clients that use the Transportation Disadvantage Program have an application on file, ensure that we get the reports from the coordination contractors. They are required to submit information for an annual operating report that is required by the Commission for Transportation Disadvantage, and some of those had not submitted that information. And also we must establish a goal for transferring passengers from the door-to-door service to the fixed route. So those are some of the things that we had going on.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for Space Coast Area Transit? All right, we'll move on to Public Engagement Report.
Mr. Chair, Abby is out sick today, and her Public Engagement Report is in the package.
Very well. We wish her well soon.
He's probably watching.
Probably.
Good. Let's see, last is the local government report. Are there any representatives from local governments that would like to give a report or say anything? Jared's smiling.
Oh, no,
Okay.
they would raise crosswalks.
Okay, that's fine. Anybody else? Sorry, Jared. Okay, anything else to be brought forth to these committees?
Just a reminder, for those of you that received perfect attendance, meet me out in the hallway so Sarah can take a picture of you.
Will do. Okay, thank you very much. This meeting is adjourned.